Clavin.
I am here.
Councilman Dunn.
Here.
Deputy Supervisor Gooseby. Here. Councilwoman Miller.
Here.
Councilman Muscarella.
Present.
Councilwoman Ryder.
Here.
Just because you're unique, I'm going to ask you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilman Muscarella. Oh.
Receiver of taxes.
How?
Here.
Oh, you know what? I take it back. Receiver of Taxes, Janine Driscoll, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Receiver of Taxes Driscoll, for doing it. It's much better than Tommy could have ever done it. Madam Clerk, would you please call today's special public hearing?
We have the determination if 434 Hempstead Turnpike in West Hempstead, New York, is a public nuisance.
All right. Mr. McEnroe, would you care to address the board?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. As you know, a significant amount of litigation has already occurred with regard to this matter, and an issue has been raised as to the timing of this hearing, which we believe is without merit. However, in an abundance of caution, I would ask that at the end of today's proceedings, that you continue this hearing until Wednesday, September 6th at 10:30. And to be clear, the premises are closed now, and they will continue to be closed through the pendency of the hearing on Wednesday. And at this time, Mr. Supervisor, based upon the fact that the town board considers this a very significant and serious issue, you're aware that we've retained outside counsel to help us in this endeavor. And so at this time, I would like to call Mr. Joe Macy to make a presentation.
Okay. All right, Mr. Macy, if you'd come up to the front and give your name and address. That mic seems a little low for you. I'm a little concerned, Joe, unless you're sitting down, Joe, and I don't see a chair there either, so it's going to be a tough seat. Okay.
Having said that, I will try to get the microphone working.
Morning.
I have had the pleasure of meeting most of you, those of you who I've not met. And for the record, my name is Joseph Macy. I'm here with my colleague Karen Foley, who at the... I thought I had. I apologize.
There you go. There you go. You got you.
That's why I'm an attorney. I'm not technologically adept. With the firm of Berkman, Hennig, Peterson, Petty, Garden City, Specialty.
Joe, you got to come up and help him again. Either why don't we?
Seems to be turning off.
There you go. That's better. There we go. That should work.
The gremlins have apparently arrived, so I think we're working. Wow. I told you I speak loudly. I knew it would be too much. So we are special counsel to the town in this matter. I have been asked to present to you this morning the Chapter 91 proceedings for your determination. Just to be clear, this relates to the premises at 434 Hempstead Turnpike in West Hempstead. I know that you're all familiar with that premises. It's commonly known as the Capri Motel. The presentation that I'm going to be making this morning is essentially going to come in two parts. I'm going to go through with you the requirements of Chapter 91, the procedural and substantive requirements, and the evidence that establishes those requirements. And then I will call Inspector Crawford from the Nassau County Police Department to testify to certain conditions at that premises. For the record, and just so that everything is complete and to refresh everybody's recollection, the town code under Chapter 91 establishes a procedure for declaring a premises a public nuisance. For the record and for your assistance, I have included for each of you a booklet of exhibits that will be admitted at today's proceeding. Exhibit 1 is a copy of Chapter 91 of your town code in the event that you wish to look and follow along with any of that. And the purpose of it is essentially to establish a collaborative relationship between the police department and the town for the protection of the public property values and to ensure that criminal activity does not occur at any particular premises within the town. Very importantly, to that end, the chapter establishes certain definitions which you are going to have to consider and apply in consideration of this hearing this morning. Those are set forth again in the exhibit that I have included for you. There are three relevant definitions which I'd just like to go over with you. The first is a predicate arrest. That is a defined term. It is an arrest for any of the predicate offenses defined under Chapter 91. Predicate offense, which is really the heart of the matter, is defined as a violation of any of the following sections of law. Article 220 of the penal law, those deal with controlled substances. 221 involving marijuana, whether those are still relevant or not is a consideration since 221 has been substantially amended by the legislature, but it's not really relevant to your consideration today since we'll be presenting no evidence of 221 violations, okay? Article 230, which deals with prostitution offenses. Article 263 involving sexual performance of a child. Article 260, again, unlawfully dealing with a child, and then certain violations of the New York State Alcohol and Beverage Control Act, okay? Those are the predicate offenses which would justify your finding of a public nuisance under your law. And then finally, and I think this is most important, the definition of a public nuisance, and I'll just read it for the record. Any building or structure in the unincorporated areas of the town of Hempstead wherein at least two predicate offenses have been alleged by the Nassau County Police or by any peace officer acting pursuant to his or her special duties to have occurred resulting in at least two predicate arrests, again, the definition of predicate arrest, for any thereof within any 12-month period, but not including a case in which the predicate offenses are alleged to have occurred within any single 24-hour period. So as long as the predicate offenses occur separated by 24 hours within a 12-month period, that would constitute technically sufficient evidence to establish a public nuisance, okay? Obviously, the code prohibits anyone from maintaining a property as a public nuisance. That's set forth in Section 91-3. And in order to implement this, it establishes certain procedures which this board is going to have to consider in determining whether or not a public nuisance has occurred. Your first job, quite candidly, is going to be determine whether or not those procedures have been met so that the procedural due process has been complied with. And I would refer you under the code to Section 91-4 in those instances when a predicate offense occurs at a premises. That establishes a procedure wherein the Department of Buildings, within 30 days of the arrest, again, not the conviction, but 30 days of the arrest, serves a written notice on the owner, lessee, person, or entity in control of the premises by personal delivery or certified mail return receipt requested to their last known address, advising them of the date on which the arrest occurred, the specific offense which would constitute a predicate offense under your code, and, if known, the name of the arrestee. That notice must also advise the party that if a second predicate offense occurs within that one-year period, the town may proceed with enforcement as provided in the code. Okay? I would refer you now to Exhibit 2, which has been included in your book. That is a predicate notice served by the Department of Buildings on July 27th of this year. It specifically advises of an arrest occurring on July 24th, 2023 at the above referenced premises, that premises being the one at issue here, 434 Hempstead Turnpike in West Hempstead. It identifies the name of the defendant arrested, assuming that I pronounce it properly, I believe it's Asane Gilbreth, and charging her with an offense of prostitution under Article 230 of the penal law. As I've stated, Article 230 is defined as a predicate offense under your law. That notice, in addition to the notice, you will find annexed as part of your package the certified mail return receipt request, receipt that was reflects the mailing of that, and the signed copy reflecting that it was received by the property owner. So that is all part of your package, and we would ask that that be considered as Exhibit 2 in this hearing. Okay. Moving along, if I may, that really brings us to the proceedings and what has caused us here today. After a second notice for a second procedural offense, the board is authorized to declare the premises a public nuisance, a substantial threat to the health and safety and well-being of either the building and occupants or the residents of the surrounding vicinity. And upon such finding, you may order the premises closed or boarded up for up to 1 year's time. All right? The Department of Buildings posts it in the case that were you to find that this constituted a public nuisance prohibiting entry into the business. Particularly important to your consideration here today, 91.5C of the Town Code provides for notice of this hearing. And I want to go through the requirements of it, and then I will go through the evidence showing that those requirements have been met. The notice of a hearing under Chapter 91 to declare a premises a public nuisance must be in writing and served not less than 10 days prior to the hearing. It must be served on the owner, lessee, person or entity in control of the premises, again to the last known address, by personal delivery or certified mail, return receipt requested, and by physical delivery. So there's additional requirement under the second predicate notice, physical delivery to the premises. If I can refer you to Exhibit 3, which is included in your packet. That is the second predicate notice served by the Department of Buildings. It is dated August 22nd, and as provided, it sets forth the date and time of the hearing that we are conducting here today. It advises that the purpose of the hearing is to determine whether or not the premises constitutes a public nuisance, and it sets forth the actions that the board may have taken as I previously described them to you. It further sets forth that the prior predicate notice of the first offense was served on July 24th, and it includes the report detailing both that arrest report and the second report, which is alleged to have occurred on August 1st of this year. It also sets forth, as required by the code, a copy in full of Chapter 91 so as to inform the property owner of the requirements of the law. Okay. As I've indicated, if you look, that second predicate offense occurred on August 1st of 2023. It involved an allegation of criminal sale of a controlled substance under Article 220 of the Penal Law of the State of New York, again, as defined a predicate offense, and it identifies the name of the defendant as Seth Adams. All right? Just to move on and to complete the record on this, on Exhibit 4, you will see the affidavits of service reflecting the service of posting and mailing of that notice as required by Chapter 91 on August 22nd. And Exhibit 5 is a series of photographs which shows, again, the required notice under Chapter 91 being posted on the building. And there are a series of photographs which show it both in detail and in larger context. All right. In a few minutes, I'm going to call Inspector Crawford to make a statement and to testify regarding the specific events, the two predicate offenses which bring us here today. But before doing so, I just want to introduce to you a couple of additional exhibits. If you look at Exhibit 6, that is the report of the Nassau County Police Department of a prostitution arrest occurring on July 24th of this year at the location. That is the prostitution arrest, which is the first predicate offense and which resulted in the service of the first notice. It alleges a violation of Penal Law Section 230, Article 230, as I've said. All right. Again, identifying the defendant's name, and sets forth that the predicate and as set forth in the predicate notice, it contains all of the required information. So that is the police report that brought us and caused the first predicate notice for this hearing today. Exhibit 7 is again a second Nassau County Police Department police report involving a drug offense under Article 220, controlled substances, at the location. And again, I remind you, this is one of the designated predicate offenses under Chapter 91. At the property, occurring, as I said, on the date of August 1st, again, identifying the name of the defendant as is set forth in the notice and as set forth in the second predicate notice. So you should have before you the two notices which have brought us here today, the two offenses which constitute predicate offenses under your code and which have caused this hearing. That reflects the arrest of two individuals for the specified offense at this location, all occurring in 2023 within a 12-month period. Okay? Just to summarize, you'll have to pardon me. At one point in life, I was an assistant district attorney, and we used to charge grand juries, and I'm accustomed to doing so, and I go through the elements of everything. So I'm going to do it with all of you just so it's clear. So I apologize if this is somewhat pedantic.
Not at all.
If you conclude in reviewing all the evidence that proper notice as required under Chapter 91 has been served for both of the predicate notices on the property owner, lessee, or person or entity in control, with respect to the premises at 434 Hempstead Turnpike. Third, that the first and second predicate offenses are established by the arrest records before you, and that the conduct described in the notice and attached police report establishes the arrest for those predicate offenses, that they have been properly advised of today's hearing, and that they occurred within 1 year of each other, and that as a result of this, you determine that the premises constitutes a public nuisance. And after hearing all of the public comment and such statements as the respondent may choose to make in this case, then you may determine to impose the enforcement proceedings that are set forth in Chapter 1, including the closure of this building for up to 1 year period. All right? Okay. Before I proceed to call Inspector Crawford, are there any questions that the Town Board might have either procedurally or substantively as to where we are at this time?
I don't see any at this time, Mr. Macy, so I'll let you proceed.
Thank you, Supervisor Clavin. If I could ask Inspector Crawford to step up and give his full name.
Good morning.
Good morning, Inspector.
Inspector James Crawford, commanding officer.
Microphone, Inspector, I'm sorry.
There you go. All right.
Good morning again, Inspector. Thanks for taking the time. If maybe just announce yourself again. We have a lot of residents who came, and we appreciate it.
I'm Inspector James Crawford, the 5th Precinct commanding officer.
Mr. Supervisor, I know that before I ask any questions of the inspector, he has an initial statement that he'd like to address to the board. With your permission, I'd ask him to be allowed to do so.
Absolutely.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some alarming facts with the community and the town board. The Capri Motel has been a host to criminal activity for many years. This establishment has placed an undue burden on the community and first responders, exposing the community to crime and tying up valuable police, fire, and EMS resources. In the past 2 years, the police have been brought to the motel 597 times. Many times for overdoses and other criminal activity, including 10 undetermined deaths. In the past year, 89 arrests have been made in connection with this motel. To put that in perspective, that's an arrest every 3 calendar days. These arrests consisted of attempted murder, assault, gun possession, drug possession, prostitution, and the course of sexual conduct against a minor. On behalf of the police department and the community we happily serve, it's in everyone's best interest this motel remains closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Inspector.
Mr. Supervisor, with your permission, I'd like to ask some questions of the inspector.
Absolutely, Mr. Macy.
Okay. Inspector, you briefly stated your background. If you could just elaborate on your background, your history within the police department for the record.
I've been with the Nassau County Police Department approximately 18 years, served in 7 of the 8 precincts in various capacities. I've been the commanding officer of the 5th for the last several months.
And as commanding officer of the 5th Precinct, what are your duties and responsibilities encompass?
I'm in charge of the operational aspects of the precinct and maintaining a quality of life for the residents of the precinct.
Are you familiar with the premises at 434 Hempstead Turnpike in West Hempstead?
I am, sir.
And does that particular property address fall within the jurisdiction of the Nassau County Police Department's 5th Precinct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Describe for us just generally the circumstances that have led you to become familiar with that premises.
As I stated earlier, it is a burden to the precinct. It brings us there on a regular basis. I'm familiar with it. I was a police officer in the precinct. I was lieutenant there. I'm back as the inspector, and it's been a problem for the last 18 years.
So in your professional capacity, have you had occasion to actually go to that premises?
Many times.
Okay. And just generally, if you would, describe for the town board the premises and how it is constituted currently.
The physical property has a parking lot, 3 structures, one being 2 stories, the other being 1 story, and contains several motel rooms.
Okay. Would you describe for us the surrounding community in that area, please?
It's a mixed-use area. There's commercial, but there are residential streets, residential homes within 100 feet of the motel.
You told the board in your opening statement that you've had occasion, or that the 5th Precinct has had occasion to respond to that location over the last 2 years, just under 600 times. Is that what the department would refer to as a call for service?
Yes, sir.
And what technically constitutes a call for service?
When a member of the public dials 911 or calls the precinct and requests the police to respond.
Now, in connection with those calls for service, when the Nassau County Police Department responds to a location, is a record kept of the responses to the location?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Supervisor, with your permission, I would like to hand to the witness the document that has been submitted in your packet as Exhibit 8.
Okay, absolutely.
Inspector, can you tell me if you are familiar with the document that is before you as Exhibit 8?
Yes.
And what is that document?
It is a list of case reports generated at the motel over the last, I believe it's 2 years.
And is that report prepared by the Nassau County Police Department?
Yes.
Is it made in its regular course of business?
Yes.
And it's the regular business of the police department to make and keep that record?
Yes.
The entries that are contained on there, and I note it's multiple pages, are they made at or about the time of the events to which they relate?
Yes.
And when the police department makes those entries, are they under a duty to do so accurately?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to just go through that report briefly. You've reviewed this report. Generally, what is this report, if you could explain to the town board?
So this is, we track all case reports that occur at locations, and they're classified into different categories of what police action is necessary when we're there. And this is, I don't know, probably 50 pages worth of case reports.
And does it relate to the premises at 434 Hempstead Turnpike in West Hempstead?
Yes, all pages do.
Each of these entries is
Yes,
relating
sir.
to that. Let's just for the record look. Okay. Inspector, just if I could, the categories here, I'm not going to go through each one of them. The document will speak for itself. But if I could, just the first column, it's labeled as CR. What is that?
That's the computer-generated case report number that's assigned to the call.
And towards the 5th column, as one moves in, it's report as. What does that reflect?
It's the classification of the case report.
And does it reflect the date and time when each of these occurred?
Yes.
And when you say the classification of case report, would that be the type of activity that caused the police response to that location?
Yes.
Okay. You can put that aside. I appreciate it, Inspector. Mr. Supervisor, may I again approach the witness and show him Exhibit 6?
Absolutely.
Inspector, can you tell me if you recognize the document that has been submitted as Exhibit 6?
I do recognize it.
And what is that?
It's a case report from July 24th of 2023.
And does that reflect a case report for an incident occurring at the Capri Motel at 434 Hempstead Turnpike?
Yes.
And what is the offense that is designated on that?
Prostitution.
Is there a narrative portion of that report, Inspector?
Yes.
Could you just read that for the record?
Yes. On July 24th, Narcotics Vice Squad detectives initiated an investigation while utilizing escortalligator.com, a web-based escort site. At this time, a text conversation started with phone number 516-972-5678, requiring about a date in response to an ad. During the text conversation, an agreement was reached with the individual listed in the ad for a date for the sum of 500 United States currency. This agreed upon date includes sex with a condom for a period of 2 hours. This is confirmed during these texts and subsequent phone calls. At approximately 21:20 hours, the prearranged meet location, room 226 of the Capri Motel, located at 434 Hempstead Turnpike in West Hempstead. Defendant Isaiah Gilreath was placed into custody. The defendant was transported to the 5th Precinct for arrest processing.
Thank you. And Supervisor, may I show one last exhibit to the inspector?
Absolutely.
Take a look at what was marked as Exhibit 7. Tell me if you recognize that.
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize that as?
As a case report from August 1st of 2023.
Okay, and does that reflect an arrest made by the Nassau County Police Department at the Capri Motel at 434 Hempstead Turnpike?
Yes.
Okay. Would you read from the narrative portion of that for the town board, please?
This is a little lengthy, this one. On August 1st, 2023, at approximately 17:45 hours, CERT officers Kelty and Scheller were conducting surveillance at the Capri Motor Inn, located at 434 Hempstead Turnpike, West Hempstead, New York, in response to recent increases in violent crime and quality of life issues. From their vantage point in the motel's parking lot, officers observed listed defendant Taylor Ebony enter room 211, located on the 2nd floor of the motel's east wing, and emerge approximately 2 minutes later. While exiting the room, Taylor began to look over her shoulder and around the parking lot in a nervous manner. As Taylor ambulated through the lot, she began to display signs of being under the influence of cocaine. She made involuntary jerking motions, walked with a labored and unsteady gait, and appeared to be talking to herself. Moments later, Taylor met with listed defendant Basil Patsy, and the two began to speak with one another. The defendants separated and left the officer's view. Officer Scheller then alerted additional CERT units to possible narcotics activity and broadcast a physical description of the two individuals. At this time, CERT officers Moore and Angel conducted surveillance where they observed both defendants, Taylor and Basil, at the Speedway gas station located at 435 Hempstead Turnpike, where both individuals looked as if they were waiting for someone. A few minutes later, officers observed a black male wearing a gray sweater and blue sweatpants rode up to the above-listed location on a bicycle, at which point he handed defendant Taylor what appeared to be a plastic twist of crack cocaine. The same male, now known to me as defendant Adams Seth, then engaged in another hand-to-hand transaction with defendant Basil, during which he handed Basil what appeared to be crack cocaine. At this time, CERT officers Belena and Aquilina approached defendant Taylor and uncovered 2 clear plastic bags with white rock-like substance, cocaine, believed to be crack cocaine, that was inside the subway paper bag from her right hand. Officer Angel approached defendant Basil and recovered a plastic bag with two clear plastic bags with a white rock substance believed to be crack cocaine from her left hand. Officer Moore then approached defendant Adams, at which point defendant Adams tensed up and pulled away from Officer Moore and started to run for a short distance when Officer Moore and Officer Belena were able to apprehend the defendant. Officer Moore then recovered a clear plastic bag with 55 clear plastic bags inside with white rock-like substances believed to be crack cocaine, and 1 green bottle with clear plastic bags inside with a white rock-like substance believed to be crack cocaine. All defendants were placed into custody and transported to the 5th Precinct for arrest processing. CERT officers seized $168 United States currency for asset forfeiture, which is believed to be the proceeds of the illegal narcotics sales. It continues. Upon further investigation, officers identified the defendant through station house, running defendant Taylor. Officers were made aware defendant had 4 active bench warrants from Nassau County issued on 12/5/2022, signed by the Honorable David Wright, issued from 12/5, docket number CR-008496-22 NA, signed by Honorable David Wright, issued from December 5th, 2022, docket number CR-019584-22 NA, signed by the Honorable David Wright.
Inspector, let me just interrupt you. I don't think
Yeah.
we need to go into the warrants anymore.
Okay.
I think that's fine.
Sounds good.
Mr. Supervisor, I have no further questions for the inspector unless the board would like to inquire of him.
No, not at all. I just wanted to thank the inspector for taking the time to come today. Thank you for the service to Nassau County, and thank everybody in the fifth squad. As somebody who grew up in Valley Stream, it's a great department. They do a tremendous job, and we're lucky, and all of you are assets, and you put your lives out there, and we're grateful for the time and your presentation here today. Very impactful, if I may say so the least.
Welcome, sir. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Supervisor, that concludes my presentation unless the board has further evidence. I'm happy to review it with you. I think I had done so initially at the conclusion before calling Inspector Crawford. Basically, what you have before you is you have evidence of 2 predicate arrests as defined by Town Code Article 91, the first one being prostitution, the second one being a drug offense, both occurring within a 12-month period at the premises at 434 Hempstead Turnpike, as defined under your code, predicate offenses sufficient to constitute a public nuisance. Additionally, you have proof of service of both of these in accordance with your code, and I suggest that the evidence is adequate should the board wish to make that finding that the premises constitutes a public nuisance. It would then be up to the board to determine what the appropriate remedy is. As indicated, your code would permit the property to be boarded for up to 1 year, should you make such a determination.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Macy, for the presentation or evidence. Evidence skills from the DA's office did not miss me. I like that tremendously. Made me smile. I have a tremendous amount of individuals who have put in slips, so I'll ask you to just hang out for a little bit, and I'm going to start with, I see Legislator John Jeffrey.
Supervisor, do you want me to sit or stand?
I'm not going to punish you. You can stand. No, I'm joking with you, John. You can sit. You can sit. Why don't we acknowledge? We'll go to the back podium for anybody who wants to testify. That would be great. Thank you very much.
And Supervisor, while the legislator is going to the podium, I do want to note for the record that a joint letter from Legislator John Jeffrey and Legislator Bill Gaylor has been submitted and will be made part of the official record.
Yeah, that's a fair representation. I know that Legislator Gaylor was called to a family emergency I know he wanted intention of being here, but I know that he and Legislator Giuffre have really been very focused on this, to say the least. I'm grateful for him taking time, and of course, Legislator Gaylor letter will be made part of the record, but of course, we're delighted to have Legislator Giuffre as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor. Again, I'm Legislator John Giuffre, and on behalf of myself and Legislator Gaylor, we want to thank the Town Board, the Police Department, and you, Supervisor Clavin, for the work that you have done in shutting down the Capri Motor Lodge. And based on the evidence, the residents of our districts, 144,000 people, we would like the closure to be for as long as the law allows under your town code, section 91-5. And
we appreciate the sentiment, and then again, I want to thank you and Legislator Gaylor for working with us and listening to the residents as well. And I think
Thank
we
you.
can all
This has
agree
been
residents
of
speak
ours.
very loudly here. So thank you. Next, I have up Jeff Schreiber. Mr. Schreiber, if you give your name and address for the record, thank you.
Supervisor Clavin, members of the board, my name is Jeffrey Schreiber. I'm a partner in the firm of Meister, Seelig & Fine, PLLC, at 125 Park Avenue in New York City. With me today also I have the manager and co-manager of the Capri Motel, as well as my co-counsel Chris Brown from McLaughlin & Stern. Before I begin my presentation, I have a few preliminary matters to go through. The first is I see that there is a clock ticking in front of me. And my question is whether
Counselor, I've called you up and I'm giving you the courtesy of speaking and making your presentation. I really do appreciate you traveling in from the city. We do appreciate you visiting Nassau County. Obviously, a lot of people do. But if you'd like to do a presentation, that sounds great. And when it comes to any issues that come up, they'll come up during the time. We're not here to be, sort of given a little question-answer session from you.
Mr. Clavin, Supervisor Clavin.
Yeah, sure.
With respect,
Yeah.
I'm here to represent a client.
Okay.
And I need to do it in a way that's efficient to protect the client's rights.
Okay.
I need to know before I start if the board, which is theoretically sitting here as a determinative body, although we'll come to that, intends to restrict my time so that I can choose what I have to say, including about the attempt to restrict my time.
Mr. Schreiber, again, no one's attempted to restrict your time.
So the fact that the clock...
Mr. Schreiber, again, perhaps this is your first time ever being anywhere with rules. When you ask a question and someone gives you an answer, and I'm not going to lie to you, trust me, I've gone to a courtroom too, a judge wouldn't be too kind to you right now. So what I'm saying to you is we've never said we're restricted, and if a problem comes up, of course I would notify you of it. So I'm asking you to present, on behalf of your client.
So I will take your response to mean that you are not restricting my time.
Mr. Schreiber, you can take your response whatever you want, but don't put words in my mouth. Again.
There are several other issues that need to be addressed before I can begin my presentation. First, there are two members sitting on the board, including you, Supervisor Clavin, as well as Town Board Member Muscarella, who have already made public statements in which they have prejudged and indicated to the public that they've prejudged that my client's property constitutes a public nuisance under Chapter 91 of the town's ordinances. For that reason, those two, you and Board Member Muscarella, have to recuse themselves from this proceeding because they can't sit in judgment on something that they've already prejudged. So we move that the two of you recuse yourself before we proceed.
Okay, I don't think I've made any such statement. I think we're reflective of our concerns when we're having a public hearing, like we're having here for everybody here today. So that's, I think, fair to say we don't feel that we've made that representation. In fact, we welcomed everybody to come to the public hearing so we could hear their thoughts.
So you're denying the motion? That's
But once again, Mr. Schreiber, I don't know, how you are with other entities. You don't put words into anybody's mouths. I just want to be clear on that, okay? So don't tell people what we're doing. We're being very, very respectful of you. We're giving you the opportunity to present your case. You know what? We've made a very nice record here. We're delighted again. You came to visit us all the way from New York City, and we're asking you to present your case. You made a statement. We've given an answer, and that will move on.
right. The second thing that I would request is, given that my client is the subject of this hearing, and that Mr. Macy put before the board a record with exhibits, and that other letters evidently have become part of the record before this board, based on what's occurred before I got up to speak, I would ask that we be given copies of those exhibits so that I can determine what to do about those exhibits, including questioning witnesses who might have to testify or have already testified about the contents of those exhibits.
Mr. Macy, if you'd like to respond to that.
Supervisor, if you would like, I have a full set of exhibits. This is a public forum, obviously. I'm more than happy to provide Mr. Schreiber with a set of those exhibits.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much.
Great. Now, I would also ask, Mr. Supervisor, if the town board intends to consider comments by the public as part of the evidentiary record in making a determination against my client. You're calling me to defend against statements that have not yet been made, that I've not yet heard, or will have an opportunity to test through cross-examination or respond to. So asking me to speak before I hear the evidence against my client unfairly and improperly prejudices my client.
I respectfully disagree on your presentation making that. We're giving you the opportunity. Mr. Macy said he'd present you with the documentation. You're an accomplished attorney. I'm sure you're very, very confident in any sort of, comments or defense you were going to put forth, and we appreciate it.
Sure. Okay. So now let's go to.
I don't want you to get upset. That 3-minute timer wasn't on you, so we don't want you getting a little frazzled there. So don't do the time again.
So I'm going to tell you, first of all, why you should not close this motel and why you should not deprive my clients of their property without any compensation and without, in fact, proper notice and an opportunity to be heard before you did so, because you closed them on August 7th. That's first of all. And then I'm going to tell you why you cannot close their property. So let's start with why you should not. You've heard a lot of testimony this morning, and we'll come back to it, and we have things to say about it. Now that I've had the exhibits, I'd ask the indulgence of the board or an opportunity to review them so that I can cross-examine the witnesses who've been called against my client and who've testified against my client. Just want to talk a little bit about the history of the Capri Motel and my client's ownership of it. This property has been operated as a motel continuously for the last 60 years, the last 40 of which were under the stewardship and ownership of my client. During that time, the motel has complied with all of the town's zoning rules, obtained all permits, passed all inspections. There have been never been any issues at the motel, which is clean and maintained and orderly, until suddenly this year, when out of cycle in May, after having passed all of its prior inspections, there was an inspection that came out of the blue, which notified my clients of a single supposed infraction. That was the claim that my clients supposedly did not have carbon monoxide detectors installed. And even though carbon monoxide detectors are not required because there's no gas on the premises, to comply with the request that was made in May, my client promptly installed those carbon monoxide detectors. Now, there are 27 employees of this motel. They and their families rely on the incomes that they earn as a result of their employment at this motel, all of whom will be put out of business and will lose their incomes if you shut the motel. Now, during the time that my clients have been operating the motel, they have served as a valuable public resource, cooperating with the police in connection with police investigations that occurred relating to activity where the police requested cooperation and where my clients affirmatively volunteered such cooperation. And the motel was also used to house people who DSS requested to put there because they could afford to stay there. The hotel was clean, was safe, and was well maintained. Everything was fine, and everything was proceeding correctly until on August 7th, a team of people, including police and fire and other people, came to the motel, put a barrage of tickets on the motel alleging fire and safety violations,
At the time, there was only a single, what Mr. Macy called predicate notice, which had been sent to the motel on July 27th, alleging that a predicate offense had occurred on July 24th. And although there is no right under the town's ordinances that were cited in the tickets to close the motel at the time, everyone came with the padlocks in hand because it had already been determined, despite this hearing that you're supposed to be having, to close the motel already. And that's in fact what happened, even though at the time, and I have people here from the motel who will testify, that they were told that in fact the hotel was being closed as a public nuisance, notwithstanding the fact that there was no second notice given yet and no hearing yet given. In fact, the second notice that was given, what you call a second notice, was not given until August 22nd, 9 days before this hearing, which is supposed to happen on 10 days' notice. And by the way, adjourning it so that it's not closed until next week doesn't cure the fact that when it happened with improper notice. That second notice said that there was a predicate arrest that occurred on August 1st. Of course, my clients did not get that notice until August 22nd, after the hotel had been closed for more than 2 weeks. So now let's talk a little bit about what, I'm just going to finish before I come back to that. I just want to get back to the last point about why you shouldn't close the motel, right? What population does the motel service, and why are we here? The motel was primarily occupied by people who DSS put them who needed a place to go in order to find a place to stay. And the motel for 60 years, 40 under my client's stewardship, has serviced the needs of people who have need to have a place to stay and can't afford to stay at the Four Seasons. They need places to stay too, and they stay often at the Capri Motel, which was highly rated, frankly, on travel sites before the town swooped in and closed it. And we all know that that people perhaps did not like the way those people looked, but that is not a basis to swoop in and close. Now going back to the notices that were issued, so there are some procedural problems with you proceeding other than the ones that I mentioned at the outset. First, as Mr. Macy noted, under Chapter 91, the first notice, in order to be a valid notice, has to be served along with a copy of Chapter 91 of the ordinances of the town. It was not done so. All that was given was a letter that said there has been a predicate arrest at the site. It also had the name of the arrestee. It did not have, by the way, the address of the arrestee, which your ordinance also requires by its express terms, if that's available to the town. We have no idea whether the town reasonably was aware of it or not, because none of the materials that were provided were previously provided to us. So without that there, you have two defects in your first notice. And the last time I checked, even though I'm a lawyer and math is not my strong suit, you can't get to two without counting to one first. The second notice, which in fact was served with the chapter, was served too late to have this hearing begin today, which is only 9 days notice when your statute requires 10. Moreover, the entire statutory scheme is subject to challenge. You began this proceeding by pledging allegiance to the flag and the republic for which it stands, which includes the Constitution of the United States of America, as well as the Constitution of New York State, both of which apply even in the town of Hempstead. Now, what those require is that they have certain concepts in them, like the fact that my client, which has been an upstanding citizen, and frankly, if you'll permit, will have testimony, has taken all steps consistent with industry norms to prevent and do whatever was in its power, reasonably possible, to prevent criminal activity at its premises, of which, by the way, it is as much a victim as anybody else. Officer Crawford talked earlier about calls from the motel. Many of those calls come from my client's staff who are asking the police to deal with problems not of my client's creation, but of other people's creation. In fact, everyone here, people who are homeowners or have their own businesses, always have the potential that someone else could choose to engage in improper conduct on their property, and because your ordinance uses arrests, as a proxy for convictions, and arrests, because everyone is entitled to a presumption of innocence, mean that you can't assume that there was a crime, let alone where the arrest actually occurred based on the second notice and the testimony you've had today. What you've set up is a paradigm under which anyone that the town decides they don't like can be shut down for a period of up to a year simply because the town decides to go and have someone make arrests there that fall within the predicate offenses, even if the predicate offenses didn't occur. In fact, we have no idea whether any of the arrests at issue in this case resulted in convictions, whether any of the underlying predicate offenses occurred, or whether my client failed in any way to take any action one way or another to either permit affirmatively those things to happen or fail to take actions necessary to prevent them. So you are punishing my client by taking away its property for the actions of others that may or may not have been criminal, and doing so without respect to any culpability on the part of my client. That is not consistent with the pledge that we all stood when we put our hands over our hearts and pledged our allegiance to the values for which this republic stands. And frankly, everyone here, even those who are unhappy with the motel being where it is, which, by the way, the motel is not in a residential area. It is in a commercial area. It backs up onto a ShopRite. It backs up onto other stores in a strip where there's really no residents immediately in that area. Everyone here is subject to, if someone decides they don't like them, to the draconian provisions of your town ordinance, which allow you, irrespective of their own culpability and irrespective of their own responsible acts, to take their property away merely because you dispatch someone to make arrests there, irrespective of whether the underlying offenses actually occurred. That is unconstitutional. It's also unconstitutional to close a business without giving them an opportunity to address the issues that you claim caused the closure or justify the closure, particularly when the town doesn't have the power to do so. And by the way, the town does not have the power to do so, right? This is an ultra vires act. You cannot act as judge, jury, and executioner. And we all understand that that's exactly what's happening here. So you can go ahead with your hearing. I have witnesses who I would like to call both in support of my client's position, and I would like to cross-examine witnesses who testify against my client. So my question to you is, when will I have the opportunity to do that? This is a statement, it's not evidence, it's argument. When do I have the opportunity to examine the evidence that's put in against me and against my client, test the sufficiency of the evidence, and put on my own evidence in order to address the claims that are being made?
Absolutely. Mr. Akinone, our town attorney, I'll let you respond. I do want to set the record straight, though, that I think it's a Stop and Shop and not a shop right next door, if I remember correctly. Right. Just want to set that record right. But I'll let Mr. Akinone respond.
Mr. Schreiber, you made a number of interesting claims, one of which was that the hotel was closed as a result of this proceeding. Nothing is further from the truth.
That's not what I said, Mr. McElroy.
Well, the record speaks for itself. In May, an inspection was done, and your client was given a notice of violation and required to fix a number of things, none of which he did. The hotel was thereafter closed at the beginning of August, I believe it was August 7th, as a result of not only our building inspectors and building department inspecting the premises, but also an outside engineer consultant looked at the premises and determined it was an unsafe structure. This action, the result of this hearing, was the result of two predicate arrests. And the interesting, and you're making an argument as to the constitutionality of the law. This law's been on the books a long time. You made allegations that we're basically sending people there to make these types of arrests. Nothing's further from the truth. As Inspector Crawford gave testimony to this board, over 500 arrests occurred. They were called there 500 times. You even admitted that your own employees at times called. And you didn't say they weren't calling about your occupants, and they were talking about people walking on the street. So you've made a lot of allegations as to the constitutionality of the law. This is not an appropriate forum for that. Our policy here, this is a public hearing. You don't normally get to cross-examine witnesses, your own witnesses. Everything that Mr. Macy introduced and gave to the town board is a part of our public record. Mr. Macy, as a courtesy, gave you a copy of those exhibits. You can have other people testify. You can't ask them questions. You can't cross-examine them, okay? I would ask the board, based upon the fact that normally we don't do this, but we've extended to you a courtesy based upon the fact that you represent the owner of a building that potentially could be closed. I don't believe anybody has predetermined anything, that you be given the opportunity to address this board again on Wednesday when this board reconvenes. But as far as bringing witnesses, that's not the way our hearings work here. So if you have someone else that would like to testify as to certain situations or concerns that they may have, they're more than happy to and testify. It started out that way. Nobody here's testifying. Nobody's been sworn in. This is a public hearing for you as well as the public to address the town board on their concerns about this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Macarone, and I do appreciate the courtesy. So given what you've just said, I'll reserve, and I will see you again next week.
Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Next, I'm going to bring up Maureen Greenberg. Just remind everybody, if you just give your name and address when you go up to the mic, make it a little bit easier. Appreciate it.
Hello, Maureen Greenberg, 408 Tyler Place, West Hempstead. I'm the president of the West Hempstead Community Support Association, and I'm here on behalf of the executive board and the community residents that have contacted us with their concerns on the Capri Motel. The executive board has voted unanimously that this blight on the community should be closed forever. I have in hand over 757 signed petitions and 12 letters from residents that wanted to be here today but could not in support of keeping the motel closed. 2 blocks from this motel is the West Hempstead Union Free School District George Washington School. These students and teachers should not have to deal with people hanging around the blocks, surrounding the school, and looking through the fence. My own granddaughter has been witness to this. Residents live around the establishment for years, have had to put up with the drugs and illegal activities. Local businesses, Stop and Shop in particular, and I've spoken with the manager there, has put up with issues of patrons of the hotel causing issues in the stores, as well as our residents being approached in the parking lot while doing their weekly shopping. The town saw it fit to shut it down and now must keep it shut. Supervisor Clavin, Councilman Muscarella, you saw fit to hold a news conference last week speaking on how the quality of life can only be upheld by keeping the Capri closed and addressing it by holding today's meeting. As with the Courtesy Hotel years ago, we will not stand for our neighborhood to be overrun by crime and inappropriate businesses. We, the citizens of West Hempstead, call on the elected officials of this board to keep the Capri closed and to keep our residents safe and living in a community that is conducive to raising families and moving around freely and without fear. We look forward to nothing but the permanent closure of the Capri. Thank you. I would like to hand in, if possible, these petitions.
Absolutely, Ms. Greenberg, and we'll make that part of the record. Thanks for taking the time to come down today. And again, when you go up there, everyone has 3 minutes, and then you give your name and address. Next, I have Dorothy Kreminski. And if I maul your name, I really apologize, okay? Just letting you know. Because I know I mauled your name.
My name is Dorothy Krimsky. I live at 57 Walton Street in West Hempstead. I'm speaking for people. I was debating whether to speak at all, but I know that there are a lot of people who wanted to be here today but couldn't because of the time, so I felt that I could represent them. I moved to West Hempstead. It's going to be 10 years, and I moved here not only for my children and grandchildren, but because it's a very warm and very safe community. I do a lot of walking in the morning, and I walk through businesses. I would hate to walk through the driveway to Stop and Shop on the entrance of Hempstead Turnpike, and many times I drove through and I see people drinking on the street, hanging around, and I don't feel safe, and I want to feel safe. I want to just ask you to keep this motel closed for the safety of the residents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for taking the time to come down. Next I have Moshe Hill.
Good afternoon. My name is Moshe Hill. My address is 685 Hempstead Avenue. I was born and raised in West Hempstead. I moved back to the neighborhood around 7 years ago with my family. Had a couple more kids while I was here. And I have been avoiding the Capri Motel for my 37 years. There used to be a Blockbuster right next to the Capri Motel. We would ride our bikes over there. And it was literally one of the only places in West Hempstead where I had to lock up my bicycle as a teenager because it's a generally very safe community, a very lovely community, a great place to grow up, and a great place to raise my own children. But I had to lock up my bicycle just to go get a video from Blockbuster. I'm dating myself a little bit because I was afraid that by the time I came out 10 minutes later, it wouldn't be there anymore. I've had personal experience with the surrounding area of the Capri Motel. I have personally called 911 when I saw somebody passed out a block away, very, very close by. And I hope they were only passed out. I have no idea because I didn't stay to check on them. I called 911 and went on my way. And it's been a very tough, as was said, blight on our community for many, many years. And I hope that the council finds that this place should stay closed for as long as the law allows. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, I have Marge Kelly. Oh, no, I can't.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Margaret Kelly. I am the president of the Community League of Garden City South, P.O. Box 7229, Garden City, New York, 11530. We did speak with the West Hempstead Civic Association, and the Community League of, just to give you a little background, the Community League of Garden City South is the first New York State incorporated civic association on Long Island. We were established in 1929. We're proud to serve the residents and merchants within what is now known as Franklin Square School District 17, all of Garden City South, most of Franklin Square, areas of West Hempstead, North Valley Stream, and Elmont. Our motto is neighbors supporting neighbors, and today we stand in solidity to support our neighbors, the West Hempstead Community Support and Civic Association, in opposition of the reopening of the Capri Motor Inn, which stands approximately 500 feet from our district line. The establishment, built in 1957, has been a public nuisance and hazard to not only the West Hempstead community, but the surrounding communities for many years. It has become a dilapidated structure that has only received Band-Aid repairs over many decades to date, that has not been any structural or infrastructural repairs, which makes this parcel unsafe. As the Capri Motor Inn offers hourly rates, it has become a hub for criminal activity. This building has also been associated with rodents and vermin that cause health issues for neighboring properties, domestic animals, and wildlife in proximity. Crimes monopolize the neighborhood property, neighboring properties. Crimes monopolize the time of the Nassau County Police, which in turn keeps our dedicated officers from policing other areas of the communities. The time that is paid for by taxpayers and is spent more often than not within the confines of this immoral motel property. We have faced public safety issues as well as being forced to endure having to witness prostitution, vagrancy, loitering, illicit substance abuse, and sales. There has been drug-related overdoses and investigations into attempted murders at the location of this establishment. People have been abused, bodies have been removed, and arrests have been made within this 1.1338-acre property. We, the Community League of Garden City South, have vehemently stood with both Nassau County and the town of Hempstead in the opposition of the county and town of Hempstead as sanctuary district. Through research, I have discovered that privately owned transient motels, such as this one, regardless of the safety and condition of the building, are being rented by Governor Hochul to place undocumented and unprecedented.
We did, you know, we have the 3-minute rule, but
Okay.
if you have more notes and yet you want to submit them, you can email them or present them to the clerk, and we'll make it part of the record.
I'll submit the letter now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, I have Dan Oppenheimer.
Good afternoon to all. My name is Dan Oppenheimer. I live at 23 Bedell Avenue in the village of Hempstead. Obviously, there's a parallel with this in the Courtesy Hotel, which was closed about 12 years ago. One of the benefits of closing the Courtesy Hotel was not only the closure of an area that had been crime-ridden and was a detriment to the community, but also that Mill Creek Residential was ready, willing, and able to develop it into the residential building that is there now. That was a two-part process, the closing of a negative and the building of a positive. So far, obviously, I'm hearing a lot about the negative of the Capri Motel. Judging from what we hear from the attorney, the owner does not want to sell, does not want to redevelop. I would certainly hope that in the event that it is closed, that a better and a higher usage can be developed for the property. I also wanted to mention the National Liquidators, pardon me, just east of this property down the road, which has been closed off and on over the last several years and was recently rezoned from commercial into residential use, and apparently a new residential facility is on tap for there. So if the Capri is closed, and from what I'm hearing and from what I know it should be, perhaps after that it should be rezoned so it returns to a commercial usage, not a residential usage. It doesn't seem that that location is appropriate for residential. And I just wanted to make one comment about Department of Social Services, families that are in need of emergency housing, temporary housing. I don't know any of the residents of the Capri, and I would imagine most of the people here don't know them. I would assume that a great many of them are not selling drugs or not prostitutes. They are people in need of emergency housing. They are there temporarily. I don't know what percentage of the calls that the inspector referenced resulted in arrests, and indeed how many came from someone there who needed some help. Obviously, addiction plays a big part in a lot of the calls that come from there. So whatever happens to the hotel, these residents, they're not going to disappear. They need housing. They need help. That is part of the problem with places like the Capri. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, I have Barbara Hafner.
Hi, Barbara Hafner, 202 Walker Place, West Hempstead, New York. I've been a resident of West Hempstead and that residence for over 42 years. My husband's family built that house in 1950, so we've been around a while. I am a retired educator who actually worked in the school that is 2 blocks away from the Capri Hotel. So I can tell you that the activities that go on in the Capri will definitely affect the children that I had the opportunity to teach and that are attending those schools now. I have friends that live directly across the street on Osborne. Osborne is a block away. Brooklyn is 2 blocks away. Across the street is Pearl Grove Drive, and then Oakland Avenue and Garden City Boulevard. So that area is truly a residential area. And based on the inspector's report of 597 arrests in 2 years and 18 years worth of recorded problems, I think it's beyond the time that's needed to make that hotel disappear. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hafner. Tom Tittman? Mr. Tittman, if you go to the back, give your name and address for the record. Thank you so much.
My name is Tom Tittman. I live at 50 New York Avenue in West Hempstead. I'd like to thank the board for this opportunity just to address this issue. I live right across the street from the school. Our son went through education there. We just paid off our house. So I feel like we're staying. We're not going to Florida. And learning about this issue has given me concern for our young people. And hearing that there are families housed there by the Department of Social Services, first of all, their judgment in using that location probably needs to be evaluated. Our children need to grow up safe. I spent a lot of years as a Sunday school teacher, probably 30, with young children, and children are very important. They are our future. What I'd just like to mention is, you know, I walk the neighborhood every day, basically depending on what's in bloom and whose neighbor has roses and other flowers. And I go to Stop and Shop. That's our regular local supermarket. And, you know, walking past this place, you know, the Stop and Shop is right in the back. And actually, it should be probably called Stop and Cop or maybe Stop and Frisk. We need to look at this. I'm so glad that people are raising this issue because it's not visible to a lot of people. But fortunately, you know, the Nassau County Police Department has been documenting these records, and I think the record stands for itself. Something needs to be done with a facility that is housing people involved in criminal activity. And then we need to find affordable housing for the people who are displaced by the closing of this. We can't forget that there are people that don't have a house that they own, and that for whatever life has dealt them are in a tough place. So, you know, building luxury apartments like were built at the train station, that's not a solution. So if residential is considered, we need to find a way to build places that people can afford, people on ordinary salaries, people that work hard for a living. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Tittman. I apologize for how I'm going to pronounce this, but Arkidius Kalas? Arkidius Kalas? Okay. Saul Brooks? Okay. I have Barbara Keaty. Barbara Keaty? Okay, those are the slips I have from anybody who signed in. Does anybody else wish to be heard? That's okay. That's all right. Does anybody else wish to be heard that did not sign in? If you just go to the back and give your name and address for the record, sir. Thank you.
Actually, I did mark it off on my sheet when I signed in.
Okay. Just give your name and address. That's great.
Timothy Shanley, 36 Oakland Avenue. I've been living in West Hempstead now 60 years, my whole life. First part of it was on the other side of town, wasn't affected by the Capri, but you heard the rumors. Since in '95, I bought a house on Oakland Avenue, a stone's throw from the Capri Hotel. And for all the time we've lived there, me and my wife, I have 4 children, we had called the police multiple times with issues. We had to get a guard dog for almost 16 years. Every night, if you didn't lock your doors, your cars were broken into, things were stolen. And nice when you did lock the doors, sometimes they broke the antenna on your car because they were frustrated because they didn't get anything in your car. My children were never allowed, the whole time growing up, to play outside by themselves in the front of the house. They had to stay in the back. I mean, there was no way for a family to grow up. I mean, just because that there's a building, a stone throw from your house that isn't safe for a family. We stopped getting our fuel at Speedway. We got tired of being harassed by people begging for money. And sometimes they actually get like nasty and violent. I think the best thing is that the Capri is never opened again, and we find something else to put there that can actually support the neighborhood instead of hinder it. And again, people who live in West Hempstead don't utilize that. No one in West Hempstead wants. We're not a vacation spot. No one wants to go to this motel. So it really has no part in the culture of West Hempstead. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you for taking the time to come today. I do not have any other slips. Does anybody else wish to be heard in this subject that did not sign in? Okay. Mr. McEnon or Mr. Macy?
Supervisor, I have nothing further unless the board has additional questions. I do think Mr. Macaron addressed some of the comments made by Mr. Schreiber, and I think those were pertinent. He did, to some extent, confuse the Chapter 90 proceedings, which are before the Supreme Court, with this proceeding here, and I think he's drawn that appropriately. But unless you have other questions, I will stand on the record as it exists now.
No, and Mr. McEnon, just to clarify, as Town Attorney, your suggestion was the formal part of this meeting is continuing the meeting next Wednesday. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Supervisor.
And that would be an opportunity for any residents who did not come here today to come and make whatever statement they deem necessary. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the Capri motorhome will remain closed till then, correct?
It will remain closed. It's not closed because of the subject of this proceedings. It's closed because it was deemed a dangerous building.
Okay.
Duly noted.
Okay. And anybody in that time period from now through that continuation, if they choose to come, they can come. But if they choose to submit an email, comment, or something else representative, that'll be made part of the record. Is that fair to say?
That is correct, Mr. Supervisor.
And just if you spoke today, you don't get to speak again, with the exception of the council, the residents. But if new residents come down, they will be made part of the record, right?
That is correct.
Okay, I just want to be clarified. All right. So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion.
I move the public hearing be continued to Wednesday, September 6, 2023 at 10:30 a.m.
Can I please get a second on that?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Deputy Supervisor.
Supervisor Clavin.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Deputy Supervisor Gooseby.
Aye.
Councilwoman Miller.
Aye.
Councilman Muscarella.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ryder.
Aye.
Okay. I'd like to thank everybody who came down. And again, if you heard Mr. McEnon tell you, we're going to have a continuation of the hearing on Wednesday. If anybody else wishes to come down, let your neighbors know. I know we received a couple of emails along the way of set residents who couldn't come down. We appreciate that. With that, may I please have a motion?
I move that we suspend the meeting. We finished the meeting. It's finished. Let's go home. Let's adjourn.
All right.
Second that motion.
Supervisor Clavin.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Deputy Supervisor Gooseby.
Aye.
Councilwoman Miller.
Aye.
Councilman Muscarella.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ryder.
Aye.
I want to thank everybody for coming down. I wish everybody a happy Labor Day weekend. Enjoy the nice weather. And maybe we'll see you at our concert at the beach on Saturday night with Mike the Judas from Billy Joel. Thank you all very, very much.